Welcome to Service Titans, the podcast where we dive deep into the inspiring journeys of Black men within the AmeriCorps community. From serving in classrooms to rebuilding neighborhoods, these are the stories of passion, purpose, and resilience. Join us as we amplify the voices of members of the AmeriCorps community and share their triumphs, challenges, and the impact they've made in their communities. Whether you're a seasoned AmeriCorps veteran or someone considering service, this is the space to explore, reflect, and be inspired. Get ready to be uplifted, empowered, and connected. This is Service Titans.
The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individuals speaking and do not reflect the views of their employers, organizations, or any groups they may be affiliated with. We are here to have real, honest conversations, and that means everything shared is coming from personal perspectives, not on behalf of any company or institution. Some episodes may include discussions around sensitive topics that could be triggering or emotionally intense for some listeners. Please take care of yourself and pause if you need to.
Tray, welcome to the podcast. We'd love to start with just the beginning. And I think it's really important to just kind of highlight who we are and our upbringing and how we grew up is like such a fundamental aspect of that. So I want to start with can you tell me a little bit about where you grew up and what sparked this passion for service and leadership?
I would say it starts off, my mother is retired from the police department. My father is retired from the fire department. My mentors were in between both of those spaces. We either had firemen, policemen, or pastors. So it was always around. My grandmother was a minister in the church. And so we have folks that have just been around. Service has been a part of who I've been. And I'm in Atlanta. Most of our folks are from South Georgia, Atlanta, a little bit of folks went to Ohio, but I'm born and raised here in Atlanta. It's my home. I've tried to go away, but it's no place like
bringing
this.
You back, huh?
It's absolutely. Yeah. And so kind of growing up, it was a part of work. It was a part of how we moved. And I try to inflict that in my sons as well, in our family. But one of the things was just hey, we're going to go feed someone, or we're going to go clean this up, or we need to respond to this. There's a disaster that just happened. There's a fire that just happened. We need to do something about it. And so that's basically how I was raised. I remember one of my first big projects was actually, I ended up being a youth mentor, which is kind of interesting, but I was younger than everyone else. It was a weird experience. I think that set it off of really being able to start off in youth development. So some folks don't even know this, that I actually started off in youth development in my career, but we'll jump into that in a second. That's basically where it started. It started with just being rooted in what the family wanted us to do. The service is a part of who we are. We serve in a lot of different spaces. And I think faith was a part of that too. We've been motivated that this is how we function as a family. And so from early age, volunteered. When I got a little bit older, still volunteering, and then kind of going through high school. We were required back at some particular point. I had no problem with killing those little 30, or it was 300 hours or 30 hours. I was like, yeah, this is easy. We do this in weekends. And so let me see how far I want to go. I tell you what, I went to school. I thought I was going to be sitting in front of a computer all day doing code. I went to Southern Poly, north of the city of Atlanta, and I thought I wanted to really go into building software for some particular reason. Well, I know why, really. My first company was TSD Software Installation. So you remember AOL?
Yeah.
So not everyone knew how to get on the internet. And so I used to build computers and build computers, fix computers, and basically help people get online. That was one of my first jobs, or the first job I gave to myself. I would drive around in my mom's car, around the neighborhoods, around the east side of Atlanta, basically getting people online and getting ready to go. So, of course, in that time, I thought, oh, this is something I should be doing. Let's keep going, stay in that space. I get to school, find out what it really is, and in that particular time, I'm also creating this organization on campus called the Men of Distinction. The Men of Distinction, it starts off with about 12 brothers. Then it grew to something much larger than I can expect. But we started off in a place of being of service. There was a middle school right across, not too far from campus, basically right across the street. And we started a tutoring program and a mentoring program there. Let's fast forward that story just a little bit. There's a Red Cross office that's not too far from there. It was in the Cobb County area. They hear what we're doing. They contact me. I was interested in their youth development program. So I thought I could go, and I'm still about 18 at that time. And I was like, let me see if I can do that. I try to get in there, and they was like, well, you're a little too old but we would love for you to lead our youth development kind of efforts in here. So I became a youth facilitator, working with Red Cross. That came from us seeing a need across the street from campus. There was a lot of chatter. I ended up working there during the summers. I think everything kind of shifted. It changed my perspective. I think from doing that particular work, working with young people, I knew I did not necessarily want to be in front of a computer all day. Now, of course, now we're in front of computers all day. I'm not sitting and coding. I'm actually interacting with people. If I am in front of a computer, I'm actually talking with people. And so I'm not really made for like basement work, as I used to call it. I'm sitting in my dungeon, and they always need sunlight. And so that's where it starts. It goes, from there, it shifts from there. I end up working with Red Cross and working on their leadership development conferences. There's probably a lot of folks that didn't even know that Red Cross had a youth program outside of the water safety, first aid, CPR. We actually had a strong leadership development program. It was great. That taught those soft skills, those power skills as we call them now, to these folks. And so there are thousands of young people who I still follow some of them I still follow to this day, that have seen me somewhere or been to one of our conferences where I facilitated. We used to do something at Emory University. Can you imagine? We used to do it for high school and middle school. Can you imagine 500 middle schoolers and/or high schoolers on campus for the first time, on Emory University's campus for the first time, for about a week?
No, yeah, that's an experience there.
Over the years, again, I'm still fairly young at this point, and they start making me the dean of men. And so youth development has been like my anchor. It's been a place of, looking at how do we get the most out of that particular potential. That just keeps going. It kept snowballing. And in fact, I'm still in school. And while I'm in school, I'm taking another little extra job. And I was working at Chili's. That's back when they were really advertising those baby back ribs.
Yeah.
Big
Chili's was the spot.
It was always a spot.
Yeah.
And my friend, and I still to this day, my friend Christian, he said, hey man, I know you love service and what you're doing. I got some folks that are coming into town. They were at the Denver campus. They were coming from Denver, and they had just finished their NCCC term. And I said, what is the NCCC? He's like, trust me, you're gonna love it. Everything that you want to do is
right there.
Right there. They came, sat down, sat in my section right before I got cut for that evening. We chatted for like 30 minutes. I was there. I applied like 2 weeks later, did the interview, got in, of course, fast forward, and I'm in Sacramento. Didn't think I was going to go I thought I was going to go to like Maryland, but they shipped me all the way to the West Coast. My first time really being far away by myself. And so being on campus, we served for that full year. We were in Sacramento. We're in San Francisco. I was in the El Dorado National Forest. I was on a fire team then. We were in Indio, California. We were building homes at that point. I'm in Tucson, Arizona. I'm teaching poetry. And we're just moving and serving. We're in San Francisco at the food bank. And so I am really getting a kick out of this. And it's reaffirming who I believe I really am, who I want to become, what I really want to do and how I want to show up in the world. And so NCCC was really one of the best moments, best time, even though it was just a year. It was probably, I believe it's one of the best years I've ever had because it was transformational for me. Fast forward a little bit more, I come back, I get an interview while I'm in Triple C. They fly me back to the city. Red Cross asked me to run the youth development department at that point and do a little split. So I'm in youth development. Well, I wasn't running it at that time. I was a key person. I'll just say it that way. That's a better way of saying that. From that point, I come back to Atlanta. I have a place to work. That ends up being August 2005. If most of the folks that are probably listening, you remember late August 2005, that was the time of Hurricane Katrina. So you can imagine I'm 30 days in, not even 30 days in. This is my first DR. I'm thinking I'm going home because my birthday is Labor Day weekend. It's all happening. I'm like, yeah, I'm about to go home. And it's I don't know what's going on. That's not I'm in new development. That's not what I do.
Get home, right?
Get it home. And I remember my chief officer stopped by my desk, stopped by my office and said, "Hey, what you doing?" I said, I'm packing. Headed home. She said, "Nah, I need you to stay. I need you to open up shelters." And I said, "I haven't opened up shelters." She said one particular thing, and she will verify all of this. She said, "Didn't you just do AmeriCorps? You just did NCCC, yes?" I said, "Yes." She said, "You'll be fine. Go ahead and go downstairs." I said, "No problem." I had stuff downstairs ready to go. From that point on, from working with a couple of key great volunteers at that point, I'll end up opening shelters across the city, multiple shelters in the city, outside the city, on the west side of the city, on the east side of the city, downtown at Georgia Tech. And it just continued. And so I stayed with Red Cross for a long period of time. I was there until basically 2008. And then I leave there and move. And then I'm at the Points of Life Foundation. I want to pause here because it seems like it's a long story.
I mean, I'm taking it in, and there's also, as you have conversations, you realize that there's these interconnected points. So I know so much about that Sacramento base of NCCC. Like I spent some time there and done trainings there. Know where you're at with that one. But then also, when you talk about services, there's this idea of the foundation being family in your community, which I can identify on so many different levels.
Yeah.
But what really stands out there, Trey, is like this call to action, which seems to be a similar thread through both your upbringing, but also as we were kind of talking about NCCC and et cetera.
Sure.
I kind of want to jump into just life after AmeriCorps, and know that you've kind of had an extensive career in leadership and coaching and civic engagement and say the youth development and the list goes on and on. But I really want to hone in on what drew you at founding Think for Good and Service Nerd. Like I think when I met you in the AmeriCorps space, I just thought that was one so dope. Is that one that's the idea of really taking this idea around service and supporting and helping others, and that founding piece of it. I get a little bit more of an understanding. It comes from the entrepreneurial spirit that's kind of seems to be there, and it's like that upbringing. So I'm gonna pause there. Can you talk a little bit about that transition and what was kind of the call to action in those two endeavors?
So I've always felt that it was something else missing. It was actually sparked by a coach, one of my first coaches, Dr. Harris. And when I first met her, she says, "You are a fish out of water." We're talking about it within 30 minutes. First time meeting, she said, "Something's not right here." But the main thing, when she said after that, and I listen to that recording every now and then, but she says, as soon as you get congruent, everything's going to open up. And so she was absolutely right. I felt I was holding certain things back of what I know, how I approach things, my views, my understandings, and so on. She said, let's just start to experiment. I started experimenting. I had my first couple of classes was at Spelman and Morehouse. Experiment with an idea of what is it about service that can move folks forward? And so this idea of my first session was the civic engagement continuum, understanding where you are in that space and who you really want to be in that continuum. Are you a politician? Maybe. Or are you someone that is really altruistic and are ready to go in the immediate right there? Or are you an organizer? Kind of knowing where people are. And so as I was experimenting, I also got validation that my ideas weren't just ideas. They actually have great impact when actually implemented. And I didn't feel like I had that in certain spaces. And so from there, it was okay, I got to keep going. And I kept getting, little multiple validations here. And we went ahead and launched Think for Good. Now, before that, the one of the companies that we tried to open up was called Apathy into Action. That was the calling, moving folks from apathy into action. So Think for Good came out of that particular time where we wanted folks to really focus in on how do you move people forward. I now realized like it was important to do that at that moment because of the transition that was going to happen in national service, who was going to be in national service, where I was going to be. And I don't think would have been able to have the same impact that I think I'm having right now if I was, still with the foundation or somewhere else. We do things globally now. And so the Service Nerd came about because, and I think this is a good story. I think maybe we've talked about, I'm still a systems person. I am very much someone that studies everything. If it's something I'm responsible for, I need to know it all the way through. So the CFRs, the rules and regulations, the terms and conditions, I knew that stuff by heart, literally. And so one of my coworkers actually gave me the nickname, the Service Nerd. And I took it from that point. I totally embodied it. And because, I was one that was be able to quote the CFR in a meeting. It's like, no, that's why we can't do that. And so that's where that comes from, and continuing to move forward. And I also realized in that space that as much as we're building out programs, one of the things we kept, at one point, we were just not paying attention to it. I call it the H factor. It's like, hey, it's human. These are humans. We can build programs, but humans are operating these programs. You're managing and leading in these spaces. And so no one's really focused on their development. And I was like, wow, oh, there it is right there. And when I kept asking why this is occurring, why we're having these failings, I said, oh, they need their own development. And so that's where my focus is. Now, keep in mind that I also, I was already in youth development. So I think I'm still in youth development, but, we're just older now. Same thing, because we're teaching some of the same concepts.
Same process, yeah.
And I always say, so most of the time, we're just big kids. We're just big kids.
Yeah, as how we started at, that foundation, those things that we observed, we've been through as growing up as young people, just manifest as we're adults in some ways, we're learning along the way. So I'm so with you with that. But Trey, you started that part of our conversation about just this identity piece and being AmeriCorps, being a vehicle, continue to kind of learn and identify and find your voice in this space. I think for me, having some very similar experience through AmeriCorps, one thing that's also been very prevalent for me, and I think we're kind of laughing about a little bit, is that when you're in spaces, particularly when there are other Black men, it's very apparent that there's a connection there, but also there's a need for more representation in this space. So I'd love to dive in there a little bit, particularly around how has your identity sort of helped shape who you are as a leader? And how do you navigate through this space as a service leader, particularly where there's not so much representation when we talk about Black men in this space?
Sure. So one of the things I always know that I have to be nimble in my language. I think that has been really big for me, of being able to talk to different audiences, even though, talk to different audiences without losing my authenticity. That's been really important for me. I just need, and that's the same if I'm in South Georgia or I'm in Seattle, I'm still saying the same things, but I need to know what's going on in their mind so I can speak to them. I think that's what every great teacher, every great facilitator is going to want to do. And so as I moved and navigated, I think it was a little bit of a challenge, because I didn't even think about the first time we met. I think it was definitely in DC, and it was like, hey, and you came up to me, and I was like, yeah, I know it's 7 of us. There's 7 of us in the room. 7 of us in the room. I know. And every time I go, I would try to find hey, so who's here? One of the things for me is in the space of identity is I wanted to make sure that I maintain who I am. And so going back to what my coach said, she says, you gotta be congruent. And I try to show up in the same way. Everyone knows I have a particular way of speaking. I try to be forceful as much as I can. I always tell people I can't create safe spaces, but I believe that everyone in this room can actually be more courageous. So let's make that happen. I can't put pillows everywhere, but you can be braver in your conversation, in your thinking, in your habits, and so on. And that's been my place. I don't care who you are, where you are. I don't even really care where your biases are, because as long as you're brave enough to understand that you do have those, we can have a good conversation. We can have a good workshop. We can have a great experience here. And so as I'm designing, I think about it in that way. I think about how humans perform, then overlay that with culture, then overlay that with geographic context, and so on and so on. I hope I answered your question, but
Yeah, no, I think that's, one is I've recently been thinking through the role I play, particularly as a facilitator, as a leader, and the intentionality around, creating spaces where diverse voices and can be heard around, particularly around leadership, career development. I understand, as you kind of alluded to, there's a journey. Your voice is kind of found in this space. And I know, as a facilitator, as you mentioned, what role do I play in creating a space where people can feel courageous? Are there any intentional best practices that you kind of use there? I know you alluded to listening. Hey, I'm not putting pillows around, but just kind of in that space. I particularly think of those young professionals, and particularly young Black men, that they're trying to, as you mentioned, navigate this space and understand when they should be, quote unquote, a little bit more assertive and feel a little bit more comfortable sharing their voice and their perspective, which we all know is so important, particularly in this service work. What would you say to those young people or young Black men who are kind of trying to navigate that now?
Sure. Most folks are in a space where they are moved by their values, but they don't necessarily understand what they are. They understand their beliefs, or they know they have beliefs. They don't necessarily know how they manifest in their behavior. So it starts off with, and this is a best practice, start to figure out where you are in that space, or where you are personally. And so a values assessment, or just ask yourself these 4 questions. Who am I right now? Straightforward, start writing it out. Second thing, who do I really want to become? Now you start thinking about the ideal person that you really want to be, right? Because then you can start figuring out how you want to show up, because you want to show up as that ideal person, right? What do you want to do, and so on. That also helps you kind of build out, in essence, a mission for yourself. It helps you create almost like a manifesto. And if you think about, so many of us are in the service sector, we work with nonprofits that have mission statements, value statements, vision statements that help guide decisions, and so on. Guide decisions, figure out who's going to fit with our culture, right? What we're going to do in our work, and so on. And so I've always said to start off with, you got to have that sense of self first. Then you can figure out, okay, all right, now that I know who I am and why I believe the way I'm believing, as I move through, I need to also be present. The challenge for so many folks right now is that we are constantly distracted and we don't realize it. We have become addicted to this thing, a TV, phone. It is everything. It's everything in one place. Game system. And so presence is like failing people right now. And so because people are not necessarily present, and I'm trying to push it to folks, like just slow down. Just slow it down. You don't have to respond right now. You don't even have to send that email just yet. Send it to somebody else first. You can just slow down. That's the second thing. The third thing is actually you need to have, as I talked about before, everyone can be more courageous. We are stifled yet motivated into certain behaviors by our fears at certain times. Not everyone, but there's a good portion of folks that are right here or doing, or either not where they want to be, or have pushed themselves in a place. Either way, it's just they're stuck in a place because of fear. And so I need you to do something that's getting you out of your comfort zone regularly. I need you to really start thinking about, I call it the counterphobic habit. You need to do something every week, something every month that gets you out of your comfort zone, because courage is actually built.
Yeah, I love it.
So you'll see, I think people start noticing, like, I'm talking about courage all the time, because fear is creating so many challenges for us in leadership and our people. And it does not allow you to have clarity it actually is going to reduce what you're competent in. And so it doesn't allow for you to have the confidence that you want. And so you have to eliminate or at least get control of the fear first so that you can do all the things that I believe God has called you to do.
Yeah, man, I think you're so spot on so many levels. And I think just to hear it aloud, that this idea that it's okay to slow down in a world where everything is moving so fast. And just like fundamentally, it's just, it's kind of starting with yourself and understanding, like, how do you continue to each day become more courageous? Yeah, I'd love to see you jumping in there. Yeah, I'd love for you to.
So one other thing about this is I think this is the other part of being present, that you are on your own journey. So because you are on your own journey. So one of the challenges I think I was dealing with is that I was also looking at this VP over here, or looking at these folks that were much older than me as well, had a lot more time of life, I would say. And I was like, I should be there at 27, right? And but the other part is, then some folks that were about my age at the same time, it's like, well, everyone has their own measure. We don't necessarily know what their journey is. And so I realized I was in a place that I was coveting their position, their space, their brilliance even. And I was like, I should have that. And then I realized that's not how that works. And so I had to realize that I'm on my own journey, and it's taken me a couple different places. And I think that's one of the things I want to push to folks as well. Remember that you're on your own journey, and it is a journey. It's not necessarily, I want to be here, and your timeline is sometimes a joke.
I hear you, and I'm so with you on that. Is I've heard in some ways you got to run your own race, and I know it's so hard to kind of wonder who's next to you and how they're running, but you just got to run your own race, and I so appreciate you for like jumping in with that part. But as we kind of start moving towards closing things out, you sparked something for me, which is such a joy for NCCC, is that this idea of journey. And one thing I love about NCCC, and then maybe you got a funny story for us, Trey, is that I know you get in that van and you may take a trip or so around the country. Any funny story you can share? Like, as we're talking about journey, you just take it way back, you just share AmeriCorps experience. Like, I'd love to get a little laugh here.
We are working on some controlled burns. I can't remember where we are in this particular place. We were basically at that point kind of clean up. But we had a flare up, and I don't think people realize how hot fire is when it's 4 feet flameless. I don't think you really know how hot it is. And so it was, so you can imagine, so I actually have a burn, a little bit of a little fragment of a burn that's on my eye, because, and I don't know if this is funny, but I remember us looking back as we were coming down the hill. We saw the flame, and all of us trying to run up there to catch it. I'm one of the first ones up there, but I also almost burned my eyes off, trying to get in there to it. Cause we're trying to clear the depth. Yeah. We're digging around, and stuff is, so that means embers and everything is popping up. It popped. Got right there.
They call it action.
I'm catching with the right eye. I'm like, we got it. And with my McLeod, I had a McLeod. That could be a good story. I think the other part was, it was a good time.
Nothing but respect for NCCC and both we experienced the journey, and I'm sure along those roads there's some real stories there.
There's some great times. Yes,
sure.
There's some great times.
So Trey, I think one of the things a part of this podcast is really important to me is this opportunity to just highlight those who've made an impact on our lives, and I really want to be intentional about it, creating a space for us to just highlight the service titan in our life, someone who's made a smaller, big impact on us. And I know for me, that always meant a lot when there was an elder would say, Anton, I like what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing. Just that little extra push. Yeah. So I want to give you an opportunity to highlight a service titan in your life, someone who's made an impact on you. I'd love to give you the space to show that gratitude.
Sure. A big shout out. Yeah, he's passed now. One of my favorite people that helped me really ground myself in my faith was Dr. Kevin E. Lewis. He also worked at the police department for a while. And so I didn't tell this story, but I was also with the chaplaincy department for a little bit, working under him. We had an interfaith chaplaincy. And one of the things he helped me recognize is that everyone's going to be coming from their own perspective. So, as many of the Protestant denominations you could think of, there's all of that. Then we had those that worship in the synagogue, the mosque, the temples, and all of us working together and really being able to at least just see the human in each one of those. He was like, that's what we're talking about. That's where you're going to find it. And I have always looked at or kind of heard his voice in my ears of find the human in people. Find the human. Fast forward a little bit later. So shout out to Kevin or Dr. Lewis. I found another mentor later on when I was really in national service. First time we met, it was immediate respect. And when I left the foundation, we just kept in contact. His name is Monty Hip. He runs the C4 organization, or the complementer now. He's a coach too. And one of the things that he helped me see is, again, help me pull back those scales. It's like you're limiting yourself. When you have someone that's like, hey, you are self-limiting. You are self-sabotaging right now, right?
Yeah.
That's what I really need to hear. I didn't want to hear when he's telling me, but I needed to hear it. But 2 months later, I was like, okay, I get it now. And those two have been really instrumental in basically in my particular journey of being grounded. One of the things I try to do is copy their particular morning routine, copying their morning routine of getting up before the sun comes up, reading, studying, writing every single day. That also helped me write my book because I've kept in that particular place. Actually, I got one more. And it just seems like these are all like spiritual fathers for me. Also, Richard Rohr. He's at the Center for Action and Contemplation out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Him and his team and the books that I received from him helped concretize my way of looking at the world as well. And so I think they have been, those three, in different bodies, totally different personalities. I think they have really helped me structure my particular point of view. And shout out to each one of them.
No, Trey, thanks so much for highlighting that. And it's so powerful to hear the impact that people have on your life. And particularly you talked about those habits, like those morning habits and those things that you kind of pick up when you're engaging with those who are really invested in you. And shout out to those men that you highlighted. And Trey, as we're kind of closing things out, I definitely want to give you space to highlight your social media handles, things that you're working on, projects, how people can get in touch with you, or things you just think people are interested in. We'll love to get kind of space and step back.
Sure. First thing, I'll be remiss. My wife is going to, she's like, hey, you gotta talk about your book. So I have a book called The Contemplative Morning. The Contemplative Morning was built off of those routines. So from 2016 to 2023, starting in November, I would get up, go through my morning routine, and write a message to friends and family every single day. Whatever came to mind, I would write them an encouraging note and so on. So that's, you distill those 3,000 messages into 40 days. And that's what we have, the Contemplative Morning. It's available every single place. All you have to do is look up The Contemplative Morning. You'll find it at all your favorite bookstores. If they don't have it, they can order for you. It'll be there in like 24 hours. You can also find it on any of my social media. You can find me at Tray Deadwyler on Instagram, on LinkedIn as well. You can find us at Think for Good. That's ThinkForGood. If you do a Google search for that. Of course, you can always do a search for the Service Nerd at theservicenerd.com or just the hashtag Service Nerd. I guarantee you will see this face somewhere in that feed. Big projects that we're working on right now is focusing on our Mindful Life, Mindful Leadership series. One of the things, again, I want people to be more present. And we found that even though it feels like, I don't know how that works in the workplace, it changes everything when it comes down to culture, because you're starting to recognize the human in others. And so Mindful Life, Mindful Leadership, that's been a big project for us. We want to make sure that we're spreading, in essence, the gospel of being present, no matter where you are, and how that can affect not only your personal life, but also your professional life. And those are our big projects. If people need anything related to leadership development and kind of looking at how do we improve our culture, they can always find me. There's a definite option for you within our portfolio of what we can do to support you. So feel free to contact with me. Anton knows how to find me.
No, definitely. Tray, man, truly thank you for taking the time to join the podcast, for sharing your insights, your experiences. Listeners, be sure to connect with Tray on the podcast platforms highlighted. And then with that, until next time, keep the conversation flowing, keep service front and center, and continue shining bright in your community. This is Service Titans. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us as we explored the inspiring journeys of Black men in AmeriCorps. Keep the conversation going by connecting with us on social media. Until next time, stay committed, stay courageous, and keep striving to make a difference. This is Service Titans, where every story told is a testament to the power of service. Thank you for listening.